welcome to Songs for Our Blue Mother. I'm Lee Hoffman, founding artistic director of All Voices Choral Project, AVCP. It's really good to be together here for this live, in-person version of the virtual concert we presented 3 months ago today. In early June, we resumed rehearsals, adding several singers, wave your hands, several singers, that we added, to form the ensemble of 16 you will enjoy today. So, because of the realities of our time now, I have a few important health and safety notes. All audience members must wear face coverings over the nose and mouth, regardless of COVID-19 vaccination status, and must maintain social distancing. All of the performers are fully vaccinated and will maintain a significant distance from you. It's nothing personal. So that they can perform without face coverings. To prepare for the unlikely event of an emergency, please take a moment now to orient yourself to the exits behind you to N Street. Don't try to go directly out those doors, but you'll go out to that and then out the side doors. And then out the way you came. So you all have a 1-page or a half-page sheet. It's 100% recycled paper. Yeah. Thanks to Shantra and Aaron Muther. Where's Aaron? Aaron and Shantra. We have an online, beautiful, tasty, juicy colors with a lot of information for you to learn more about us and follow the words. Please follow the words. It will not disturb us in the least to see you looking at your phone. We'll just think you're looking at our words. But please do. I really hope you do. So, now the first song that we perform, there will be an opportunity for you to participate. And I'll be in a microphone. You will already have heard the words that I will invite you to say with me. The words are water, we love you, we thank you, we respect you. We'll say those together and you'll see what it's about at that time. We ask that you hold your applause until the very end. Each moment, from one song to the next, from one portion of the program to the next, is a very important transitional moment. So we'll have a time to have applause at the end if you so choose. So the mission of AVCP, All Voices Choral Project, is to harmonize the divide by educating, inspiring, and mobilizing people through music. You, including me, may experience a range of thoughts and emotions in response to the music and ideas we present in this concert. If you feel discomfort, I invite you to simply observe your thoughts, your emotions, your body, and breathe. Later in the program, there will be opportunity for some thoughtful questions and discussion. A portion of concert donations, we hope to amplify advocates for Indigenous California language survival. You will hear from James Sarmento, who suggested that organization. They foster the restoration and revival of Indigenous California languages. Think of that, California Indigenous languages, so that they may be retained as a permanent part of the living cultures of Native California. Every gift to them is a commitment to a culture bearer. The other organization is Environmental Justice Coalition for Water, which envisions all communities throughout California having access to safe and affordable water, clean rivers, streams, and bays for personal, cultural, ceremonial, and recreational uses. So I'd like all of us to now turn our thoughts and our energy to the land on which we sit. And if you're standing, I'm standing. I'm standing on land that I would like now to acknowledge. We hold our event on this ancient place of gathering. It is the land of the southern Maidu people to the north, the valley and plains Miwok peoples to the south of the American River, and the Patwin-Wintun peoples to the west of the Sacramento River, as the original stewards and traditional caretakers of this land. We honor them for their strength, perseverance, and resistance. This concert of restitution and restoration focuses on water and the interconnectedness of all things, planet and individual, peace and turmoil, history and now. Mother Earth cannot continue to provide for us as long as we seek ownership. Instead, we must listen to the wisdom of those who live in relationship with the earth and all living beings. We invite you to tune in more deeply than ever before to your sense of connection to life within and beyond yourself. Songs for our Blue Mother.
Water. We love you. We thank you. We respect you.
Connected. Whatever befalls the earth, befalls the children of the earth.
All things share the same breath, the beast, the tree, the man. The air shares its spirit with all the life it supports.
We did not weave the web of life, we are merely a strand in it. Whatever we do to the web, we do to ourselves. This we know.
All things are connected. All living things share the same breath. All things are connected. The air shares its spirit with all life. All things are connected. Just like the blood which unites us all. All
We do not inherit the earth from our ancestors. We borrow it from our children.
Let it speak to you, the fragrance of a flower and the freshness of the grass, the music of the sea. Let it speak to you, hills and mountains, thundering skies, and the rhythm of life. All things are connected, just like the blood which unites us all. All things are connected, whatever befalls the earth befalls the children of the earth. All things are connected. All things are connected. All things are connected. All things.
Only after the last tree has been cut down, only after the last river has been poisoned, only after the last fish has been caught, only then will we find money cannot be eaten.
When we released the virtual rendition of this concert, some of the folks who saw it asked us why we included topics like genocide, indigenous land rights, and slavery in a program about climate justice. The reason is the capitalist structures of power that are dumping oil and plastic into our oceans and streams are the same ones that violently stole this land from its indigenous peoples, and the same ones that enslaved Black people and continue to enact violence on Black and indigenous communities to this day. To address the issues of climate change at its source forces us to recognize all forms of oppression and the ways that they are interconnected. I'm sure many of you are familiar with the phrase, "an injury to one is an injury to all." Acknowledging the depths of harm inflicted by our government can be really uncomfortable and even painful and heartbreaking. To reiterate what Lee said earlier, observe your emotions, breathe, and do your best to stay curious and compassionate. Healing our planet and our communities requires all of us to show up and do our part. So thank you all for showing up tonight, and I hope you enjoy the rest of what we have in store for you.
Everything around us, it's all tied into this one beautiful place. And it just inspires us to take care of this place. And that ties into our values as Indigenous people. If you take care of yourself and make sure yourself is healthy enough to take care of your family and make sure they're taking care of themselves, then it should inspire everybody to take care of the land that we all need. It all starts with being able to catch that fish and bring it home to your family. I love being down here. I love seeing our family fish. I love seeing them drift. But how much longer do we have? Back in the day, you did this all year round. You caught fish in the spring, there's fish in the fall, and there's fish in the summer. But nowadays, it's only this one time a year where we get a really good fish run. And it's really sad because this fish run is so small There's not going to be enough fish pulled out of this river to give every tribal member one fish. So we do the best that we can to make sure that we share the fish that we do get with people who might not get the ability to come down here and catch it themselves. My grandpa thought he'd never see the day where he'd catch less than 50 fish when he went fishing. Now we come out here with 3 teams and we're lucky to catch 7 fish. But the reality of it is that our people need to be fed. You know, these salmon are so important to everything that we've come to understand as Yurok people, that without these salmon, our way of life is impossible.
Being a Yurok person, the river is our lifeblood. It's just as important as the air we breathe. The Klamath Basin is really big. It stretches from southern Oregon down into Northern California, then goes out into the Pacific Ocean. It's really diverse as far as the physical aspects of it and also the biological aspects of it. Historically, this was the 3rd largest salmon-producing river on the West Coast. There's been significant declines in all anadromous fisheries to a point where some fish have been extirpated from this river system. There's probably a number of reasons why things have changed so drastically, but one of the main reasons is those dams that were put in and basically cut the watershed in half and took away 400 miles of anadromous spawning habitat.
These dams have such a big effect on our lives, and when you're younger, it feels like people are talking about like a monster or something at the head of the river.
They're not used for irrigation. They make a small percentage of what Pacific Power and Berkshire Energy's profit is.
Where rivers should be naturally fluctuating up and down, these dams are regulating the water flow towards one kind of stagnant flow. So it allows algae all along the bottom of the river to pop up and grow and just flourish.
At times, the Klamath River and the reservoirs behind the Klamath dams can be thousands of times higher than the threshold that is recommended for humans to be in. So the water is toxic, extremely toxic. And then that water is in turn released down the Klamath River.
The state of California says that you're not supposed to drink it, you're not supposed to swim in it. If you let your animals drink it, they possibly die. You come out with sores.
It's just become a part of our norm, which it shouldn't be. And it's sad to see. It's disgusting.
For like the next generations to come, my kids or my kids' kids, to be able to swim and fish and not worry.
Another very serious impact that we believe dams are responsible for is some fish disease issues that we have in the river. One fish disease in particular that we're really concerned about is called Ceratinova shasta. We call it sea shasta. It's deadly to juveniles. 90% of the fish sampled have this disease. Another disease aspect that is exacerbated by dams is a fish disease that we study here in the lower river called ick. It's a parasite that attacks fish gills. Dams warm the water unnaturally, and so warm water can lead to delays in migration here on the lower river, and we can get congregations of fish. And congregations lead to stressed out adult Chinook salmon, and stressed fish are susceptible to diseases. Ick is responsible for the 2002 Klamath River fish kill, where we lost over 60,000 adult Chinook salmon as they were returning upstream here. It was the largest salmon die-off in United States history happened right here on the Klamath River.
It was the saddest part of my life. So we believe the fishes are relative. So we're here to take care of them like they take care of us.
Every year there's this fear that builds up in us, right? That we're gonna see those fish, you know, floating down the river dead and stinky again. And that hurts so much.
That's basically what started Klamath Justice Coalition and us getting together to start this campaign to undam the Klamath.
We've worked really hard for a long time on this, and man, it feels like we're just right there at the finish line to get these dams taken out.
We've dedicated years of our lives, our young lives, to give opportunity for the next generation to live on a healthy, dam-free river.
Unfortunately, we've had to raise our children in this way to have to fight for what we live for what we believe in.
Not because we want to, it's because we have to, right? It's an obligation for us. Take care of this place, and take care of us.
In Yurok, we call it Nepui. So this has been one of the main staples for the Yurok people for our traditional diet for over thousands of years. So I'll come through and I'll defend, and I'll pass it over to the master flayer.
Women are very important in our culture. We build our people up. By 11, I was making my own gear and able to go out and pretty much feed myself, feed my family.
My great-grandparents, they did a fish war here, fought the American government just for our fishing rights. And they actually had people with riot gear beating us natives down here just for set nets. Every time you'd set net, guaranteed they'd come through and try to pull it. And us locals had to fight them off. I'm glad they did, because we wouldn't be able to take you guys out and show you our way of life today.
It's something that affects us every day because I can't just go to the grocery store and buy some salmon. I grew up with a gas station, like eating at a 7-Eleven every day. I don't think very many people could live like that.
What we know is that the river is no longer providing for us like it should be. So it can no longer provide subsistence of salmon for every family. So we have to find these different ways to provide for our people. And we want people to stand up. We want people to fight for their rights. We want people to be there. But in reality, if you don't have enough food for your family at home, how are you going to be able to go out and stand up for your rights halfway across the country or go to these protests? And how are you supposed to dedicate large portions of your time if you're worried about not having healthy food access in your home? You can't. And so it's a part of the system that's been constantly pressing our people to the point of normalization.
If someone told us that we would be growing vegetables this time last year, or told me that this is what I would be doing or we would be doing as like a unit, I would have told them they're crazy. The education of it or the resource for the education wasn't there. And we're just trying to show people that how easy it is to actually grow their own food.
Growing your food like this and growing your garden like this is like unheard of. And for us as fishermen to be out here making these types of moves, to find out what people like, to find out what people need, it's really kind of cutting edge for our community because it hasn't really been tried, hasn't really been done before.
We stopped by a house today and they said they don't like cabbage. So they're getting specific on us. And that's good.
We stopped by someone's house today. What did they say? He said that the broccoli was so fresh, they cooked it 4 days, 5 days after we gave it to them, and it looked like they just pulled it out of the ground. A lot of people told us we couldn't do it. We weren't going to be able to get a garden in. We walked away from those people, and we found the people who believed in us, and they said, you know what, if we work really hard and we push forward, you guys will be feeding people by the end of the year. And it's happening.
Cabbage, here, Baba. Grab that out. Guys, appreciate it. Okay, love you guys.
These are hard-working families. You know, they take care of their kids and other people in the community. We're teaching families how to take care of yourself. Over hundreds of generations, our families have developed a resiliency that can't be beat, that can't be destroyed. And no matter what happens, no matter what you take away, we're always going to provide for our people. We're always going to find a way to take care of our children. We're always going to find a way to move forward.
This river is our umbilical cord, what feeds us and what nurtures us. this reciprocal relationship that we have with it. I would do anything for this river, just like I would my own children. Like, I would die for it. I would do anything before I would give up on it.
There was a generation before me who dedicated their whole lives just to make sure that these dams were removed.
We must never forget that these salmon are more than just creatures of the water. They are people just like me and you. They wouldn't give up on us. We shouldn't give up on them.
They have the chance to make the world right here. Do the right thing. Take the dams down.
We're not going to give up this fight to get these dams out of this river. Like, if this doesn't work, if this current iteration of dam removal doesn't work, we'll move on to the next.
I imagine a world where we live in harmony with the river, and I see that. I see that possibility.
So every aspect of my life has been built around this river, whether it be teaching the next generation these skills of organizing, or whether it be providing food for my family.
Nothing says Northern California like cooking on a redwood skewer, an open flame.
Sammy and these young folks, they're really outspoken, and it makes me feel good that we've taught them how to do that.
They're all coming to that age, and they all know they got to stand up. It's their time.
You guys are doing the ancestral guard, the food sovereignty. Like, that's a slap in the face of all these systems. I think that's the way it has to be.
We have to be willing to put effort into things. Our survival depends on how we re-indigenize and live like we're meant to live again.
After these dams are removed, all that power is going to be put directly into building these healthy opportunities for our people.
Kasiami ma ichikatuta yapukas kekwa James Sarmento. Hi, how are you doing? My name is James Sarmento. Just want to talk a little bit about myself, but also talk a little bit about the Klamath work as well as that. So greeted you in the Shasta language. So again, like I said, my name is James Sarmento. I'm Shasta from Northern California, from the Shasta Indian people. Just to kind of show you where that is in relation to the Guardians of the River video that you saw. That was from the Yurok people, which is further to the, which is on the coast. There are Karuk people that are kind of sit between the Yurok, then there's Hupa, Karuk, and Shasta. So just to kind of put where the Shasta people are in context. So this is Northern California, this line right here, that's the Oregon-California border. Our community didn't have borders like that, where it just stopped on a dome like that. So when you're watching the video, you see that there are 4 dams that they're talking about. They're talking about Iron Gate, J.C. Boyle, Copco 1 and Copco 2. So those, all of those are right in here, where my mouse is circling on that. So when you're talking about dam removal in Northern California, these are directly impacting cultural resources and cultural sites of the Shasta people, because this is where our community, my community, is from. So a lot of that, like in terms of dam removal, it's very different talking about dam removal for Yurok and for other communities than it is with Shasta, where it's a little bit more complicated in the sense that all of the work that would occur as part of that dam removal is going to potentially damage or impact cultural resources, being anything from cultural artifacts like stone, obsidian, arrowheads, those kinds of things, but also impact human remains and other kind of cultural impacts from that area. So for the Shasta community, what you're seeing with dam removal is the restoration of the relationship between the community as well as the Klamath River, the fish, so salmon that would no doubt would come back after many years, as well as the restoration of riverways and what the uses of the river. The things that are problematic for the Shasta are that currently there are no federally recognized Shasta people. So there's in terms of federal recognition, the government recognizes the Yurok, they recognize the Karuk, they recognize Hupa, they recognize Modoc, but they don't recognize any Shasta people. So in terms of who would being able to advocate for protections for sites, the Shasta are in a very disadvantaged space from the get-go. We've done fantastically well at sort of advocating for the protection of the sacred sites in those areas that would undoubtedly be damaged from the removal process. And part, that is actually why I'm not going to, I actually can't be in person. So why you're seeing a recording instead is because I'm actually going to be at the, along the Klamath River, site monitoring to make sure that sites are protected, as well as that there's a full understanding of the potential impacts that are going to happen to Shasta cultural resources out on, as part of the dam removal. So just wanted to speak towards that, but also wanted to speak in regards to some of the other pieces that come out of this. So in terms of the video, so I think that it's when we're talking about the relationship between land for the Shasta community, as well as specifically talking about land, the river, and the people. It's not just a relationship that is. It's not just a relationship of this passing relationship. It's the knowing that we have an obligation to protect that, as well as a responsibility. So it's not that the river or any of the protections that come out of that would be. It's not some passing relationship that we have. It's an obligation to protect, the obligation to steward, that we know that the land and the river is going to come back, and that also that as part of that, when they come back, that we need to protect that. We also need to protect those ancestors and resources that would undoubtedly be damaged by the process. So it's this complicated space for the community up north. I really want to echo some of the same sentiments. Again, sort of looking at this Northern California area, my family was up in here. So my mom grew up largely in Hornbrook here, but would Copco Lakes where I learned to fish. That's where my grandfather would take me out to do that. So in terms of like connections and the area, this isn't just some random area that I knew. For me, it's this is like fishing spots that I knew that my family have known for a very long time. So it's just in terms of those sites and those protections, it's just to be able to protect those so that there's less damage is extremely important and sacred obligation to both the community and also the ancestors in the past. To speak a little bit about, again, like I said, I was from Hornbrook. I want to talk a little bit about language connection there. So my personal work is with language and language restoration. So I work largely with communities that have very few speakers. So when you're looking at this area again, Hornbrook, the last speaker of the Shasta language was Sergeant Sambo, and that's where he lived. So in terms of, there's sort of lots of connections for our people, specifically out in this region. That last speaker, out further, there was a hotel because there were hot springs out in that area, and that meant he was able to go out there and get work, and worked as a cook in some of those areas. So it's really very rich in terms of history, that as well as history being the short-term sort of like fairly recent, in the last 100 years, to like really deep history, because our community is hugely connected with that area, and it's very storied as well. So like when we talk about the relationships again between when you're seeing these relationships between the land and the water, there's also a story that goes along with that. So part of, I'm remembering a story about Annie Henach, who was the devil woman, who's actually like that whole entire area out like further out that way is littered with stories that are all being told by the community and later being passed on. So the connections to this area are immense. So when in terms of how our community views dam removal, it's very pragmatic in the sense that we understand that the dams are going to be removed. We want to make sure that it's done in a safe way that means that you have both the protection of the fish and wildlife that's currently there, as well as the protection of cultural resources that would be undoubtedly damaged by those resources. So I wanted to speak a little bit towards that. And again, I really thank you for your time and listening, and I really hope that in the future I'm able to actually meet you all in person. So with that, Kasmi Poke, that's all. And thank you for your time.
I'm the Reverend Alicia Roxanne Forde. I'm originally from Trinidad and Tobago, and I currently reside on the stolen and occupied lands of the Ute, Cheyenne, and Arapaho peoples. Earthrise. Tranquil blue waters surrounding undulating green-brown land masses. Light layers of wispy clouds sailing just above the planet. Everything about the image. Sacred connection, interdependence, peace. Absorbing it, that still photograph of the earth taken from the moon, imagining the softness of breath rising in and through the life on this planet is poignant. There is no hint of loneliness. There's no hint of sadness, of loss, violence, grief. A meditation on this oblate spheroid as it appears from the moon, capped at each pole with curtains of snow and ice, offers a sense of oneness, a holy place, a temple, a gentle swirling mass of creative potential, rotating with promise. We move with it, pulsating beings proclaiming our will to survive, to thrive. Viewing Earth, viewing us from a distance we fade, it's almost impossible to tell we're here. It's impossible to see us individually. It's impossible to capture us, label us, stamp upon us those markers, sex, race, income that declare us as different from some socially constructed norm. From a distance, it would seem that we are one body, and we have a collective impact on this blue-green, miraculously alive marble as it moves through space and time. From a distance, one might ask, do we matter? Do our actions? And up close, you'll find that we do. Our actions do. Up close, you might revel in God's infinite and creative imagination that unfolded our spacious skies or majestic mountains that press us into believing in wild things, in grace, in beauty. And yet, all is not as serene or tranquil as it seems. There are earthly wounds we've inflicted. Up close there is a world, our small United States world, in search of healing, atonement, repair. Maybe you've heard this poem, this rhyme that begins, in 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue. This poem, this rhyme was woven into the fabric of my childhood, a yarn of an explorer who, with his 3 ships, the Nina, Pinta, and Santa Maria, and happy crew, set forth with pride to discover the new world. Hailed as he was, as brave and as bright, he encountered kindness and traded food and spice. What a grotesque and distorted fantasy. Maybe you learned it in school, as I did. Maybe you'd be surprised to know that some children today still learn it in school as history, as truth, a history that renders invisible the violence of an explorer and the empire in whose name he traveled, an empire that in 1493 declared and established in the name of the made in their image God, via papal decree, that European explorers had the right to claim this land, Turtle Island, had the right to treat as subhuman any peoples already inhabiting this land, to stake flags and spread virulent ideologies, all to fund their lust for power and domination. And so it began, or maybe this is but one way in which it began, this original sin of white supremacy, the beast, the insatiable monster that promoted stealing and enslaving bodies to benefit the powerful, increased the wealth of empires who sent mercenaries into well-established and settled lands to colonize, Christianize, demolish, and dehumanize. They came and they looted resources, a verdant green earth that breathes, home to wandering waters that supported an abundance of life. They came and they looted bodies, enriching their own coffers, planting their flags of supremacy on our black, brown, and indigenous bodies, with political and religious decrees that declared we have no right to be, making it the case that to be black, to be brown, to be indigenous, is to exist in a state of constant precarity. Fearing that one's life and livelihood which exist in concert with the earth, the waters, the land, the sky, can be, will be, historically has been, looted for capitalist gain and imperialist quests that dismiss the sovereignty of this blue-green sentient being. When will we remember that, as Chief Seattle wrote, all things are connected. All living things share the same breath. The air shares its spirit with all life. The very land that cradles your being. Yes, this land, Turtle Island, where you have anchored your home. This land that now holds you, holds your family, your children, your dreams, your heart. This land has memory, history, story. It is alive. It breathes with you. Through the trees, grasses, water. Can you feel it? It longs with you. It is connected to histories that precede us. It holds stories that shape our present. It weaves those histories and those stories into our futures, and we have a responsibility to ensure those woven stories are truthful. We have a responsibility to be honest, even when those truths are painful, even when they break our hearts. The condition of reconciliation requires restitution and restoration with this earth, with its Black, brown, and indigenous people. And this is only possible when we are able to name that original sin. In 1492, Columbus sailed, and the decrees that followed unleashed imperialist violence for which there must be repair. All things are connected, woven together in the fabric of existence. All living things share the same breath. The air shares its spirit with all life, and all life shares breath with us. Come then, weave. Join your breath to water, to earth, to trees, to grasses, to sky, to Black, brown, and indigenous liberation struggles, to repair and restitution. Make real the vision of Earthrise, the blue-green earth as tranquil and holy, a temple interdependent, a gentle swirling mass of creative potential rotating with promise. An earth which cannot be claimed and belongs to no one, autonomous, wild, and free.
Good evening. My name is Yvette Couvson, and I will be sharing with you guys a painting that I did over the summer last year during the pandemic. The name of the painting is Choice or Choices. I decided to name it that because we obviously, as the human race, have a choice. We have a choice to decide what we're going to do in regards to the well-being of our planet. The painting represents a giant wave, and as you can see in the painting, it has multiple colors, and each color represents a flaw, a character flaw in humanity. Say, for instance, the red would represent hatred. The gold represents greed. The beautiful symbol that's sparkly that you see to your left is called the Besasaka. That is an ancient Ghanaian symbol that represents abundance, fluidity, trade, and commerce. And I felt like this painting really resonated with this project because of the fact that if you look at the wave, it's headed straight towards our abundance, our affluence, our trade and commerce. That is what's motivating us, and that is what's killing our planet. So I felt like it was really important for me to share that with you guys. Thank you. We are made of water. We are made of music. We are made of water. We are made of music. We are made of water. We are made of music. So we fly, so we sing. Mama, 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 life you give, we take, life we take is gone, is gone. Life you give, we share, life we share lives on. Cells dividing, wet with life. Voices joining, sea to sea. No one drop of water owns the ocean. Tears welling, years telling, tears falling down. Years and years and years and years are calling. We are made of water. We are made of music. We are made of water. We are made of music. We are made of water. We are made of music. So we fly, so we sing. Mama, 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 mama,
Saleki Tomanish, Eni Lepa, Melissa Leal, Eni Estalink, Eni Olonik, Nish Ushai, Asana, Imilano, Nimasian El Pasaleki. I said, good evening, my name is Melissa Leal. I am Ohlone and Esalen. I'm an enrolled member of the Ohlone Costano and Esalen Nation from the greater Monterey Bay region. I was born and raised here in Nisenan, Miwok territory, and I just acknowledged my ancestors, the ancestors of the people of this land, your ancestors, the water, the ocean, the sky. And I said, Nimasian et Basaleki, which we use in Esalen to say thank you. But it really means my soul feels good. Because in most indigenous languages, there was no word for thank you, because we already knew. We didn't have to say it. We interacted with people in a way that gave thanks all of the time. And so Nimasian et Basaleki, my heart or my soul feels good to be here today. I'm a professor at Sierra College, a tribal liaison, and I run the Native American Pacific Islander program also at Sierra College. That's how I met Lee, and that's why I'm here with you today. And I just wanted to talk about, in the film and in James' recording, James is a friend of mine, he talks about an obligation, right? And so that's what the title of my talk right now is. But I actually don't like that word obligation, because we have lots of obligations, right? We have to pay our loans off. You know, we gotta pay bills. Those are all obligations. And I think what we are talking about here today is much deeper, much more biological, much more spiritual than an obligation. And it's really strange for me, and I was gonna try not to say it, but I'm standing here in a church speaking a language that the church took from my ancestors, right? And so it's just, like, that's all I can tell you. It's just this, right? And so I'm proud to be able to say it. And if it wasn't for advocates for Indigenous California language survival, of whom you can donate to tonight, I also would not be able to introduce myself in my language or speak my language. So good work all around. So I brought some quotes. I just wanted to share some things, and then I really just wanted to open it up to discussion. I have a PhD in Native American Studies. You can ask me anything. I teach ethnic studies. You can ask me anything, like anything that you want to know. But first, I want to present this. A Yakima woman named Margaret Saluskine said, "Salmon was presented to me and my family through our religion as our brother. The same with the deer, and our sisters are the roots and berries, and you would treat them as such. Their life to you is just as valuable as another person's would be." And I think that the film and the people speaking in the film did a very good job at explaining that, but I don't think all of us really understand that. When I say that the salmon is my brother, that's my brother. And I'm going to protect him and save him and give him everything he needs to be productive, just like I would my brother. If not for his life or her life, then mine wouldn't exist. And so salmon are special all over the world. I had the opportunity to go to New Zealand, Aotearoa, in 2017. But the year previous, I had met a bunch of Maori people. And there are salmon from California and salmon eggs from California that are being held in New Zealand that belong to us here. Belonging meaning they are our brothers, right? And so there's a strong connection between us here in California and Maori people in New Zealand. And so I had wrote a poem for that, and I wanted to share it because it kept coming up. So I was like, let me pull it up out of my phone. This was before I had a child, and I'll tell you about the child in a second. If I am ever blessed
the gift of childbirth, of creating life within my life. Through the pain, I will remember my ancestors. I will hear them whisper in my ear and hear the names of all who came before me and all who are yet to come. Those that share my blood through blood and those that share my blood through ceremony. I will name that child Salmon, Kiliwa in my language, in their tongue. What was spoken before we called this place what we call it now. Salmon will be born a survivor, a resilient reminder of resiliency itself. Before they came and saw and named and claimed, we were like the salmon, connected in ways that we only understood through prayer. Salmon, our brother, our sister, our existence, travels back and forth and round this island, returning over and over again. Salmon will give testimony and tell stories that haven't been heard in hundreds of years. We will celebrate survival by the water, next to a mountain, under the moonlight. Our songs will indigenize the earth as we intervene in a process of destruction. We will dance for renewal and speak to revitalize what may have been asleep. We will come together to make decisions, democratizing as a collective, networking in an effort to protect our agency. As I was writing these words and as I read them now, I envision my great-grandmothers with tattoos on their chin. And I know that we are related. We are as close in spiritual DNA as we are to Kiliwa. The only thing separating us is water, or rather, the water represents a bridge, a fluid that rushes back and forth, not much different than an umbilical cord keeping us both alive, sharing in the same life force. Men and women and the powerful in between, gendering us as we were meant to be, reframing our societies to look and feel like they once did, negotiating our discovery, restoring our love of life. So, I wrote that poem, I shared that poem, and then a couple months later, I was pregnant with my first child. And while I was pregnant, I did get to go to Aotearoa, or to New Zealand, and swim in the ocean. And my child's name is Imilano, and Imilano means ocean. And so when he was born and they cut the umbilical cord, he didn't want to come out, by the way. It's a pretty traumatic birth for Mr. Ocean. But when they cut the umbilical cord, I asked if I could keep it. So they gave me a piece, and I kept it, and I put it in the freezer for a little while. And here in Miwok, Nisenan territory, a lot of people will keep afterbirth or umbilical cords and plant a tree underneath it. And so because I come from missionized tribes, we don't have a lot of those stories left of what I would have done, or what my great-great-grandmother would have done with the afterbirth, or the placenta, or the umbilical cord. So I said, I'm going to bury this umbilical cord by the ocean that I named him after. And so we went, gosh, I'm getting emotional. So we went to Monterey, and I chose a place of which, if you've ever been to Monterey, I'm sure you've walked by, near Cannery Row, where there's a small beach that everybody has to kind of walk by. I didn't want to do it in a secluded place. I wanted to reclaim those touristy areas, take back those spaces where that water flows up to the beach. And I buried his umbilical cord. So now he's always connected to his ocean, to where he comes from, to who he's named after. And so those names are so important, right? He's probably the first child born with an Esalen name in hundreds of years, right? To be given a name at birth in Esalen. So I just share that with you to show, like, what is our obligation? What is our connection? What is our responsibility? And it's all about reciprocity, right? It's all about doing for people, not to expect something in return, but so that they feel empowered and loved, that they give back to the world too. And so as you hear these songs, as you think about the indigenous people of the world, as you think about all of the people of the world, how are we going to save the earth if we can't even love each other? How are we going to do that? If it makes you feel weird to hear Black Lives Matter, you really, your brain can't go to the ocean and save the ocean, right? If, changing the Cleveland Indians to the Cleveland Guardians makes you mad, you're really not worried about those oil fields and the horrible things that happen to indigenous women around them, right? So it's like our first step at reclaiming who we are as human beings. And so a lot of Native people in our languages, so Miwok, for instance, right, local people here. Somebody came and said, oh, who are you? And they said, oh, Miwa, or Miwok, or however they said it. There's different ways to say it. And they're like, oh, these are the Miwok people. I have named you. You are now the Miwok people. Miwa just means human being. And that's a common story throughout indigenous people in the Americas, is when white people came, settlers, colonizers came and asked, who are you? People normally answered with, I'm a person, or I'm a human being. And then that word became the name of their tribe, right? So just connecting, I'm a human being, means that my responsibility on this earth is X, Y, and Z. My brother, the salmon, his responsibility on earth is ABC, right? So it's really about how you connect with the world around you, right? Being a human being. It's not about being a human being and being better and more important than everything. It's about how you're connecting with the rest of the world. Just want to share one more thing, and then I'll let you guys ask me whatever questions you'd like. In my language, and language is super important, that's why I'm so excited about you guys being able to donate to idols. In my language, there's one word, since we're in a church, this is appropriate. There's one word that means to speak and to pray. There's no difference between how I speak and how I pray. And I know in what kind of Western society there is, right? Prayer is very, protocol, you do it, right? And we do have that too within our cultures. But the lesson in this, in knowing the word for to speak, is to know that when I speak, those words that come out of my mouth are as powerful as a prayer that I am putting up to the heavens, up to God, Creator, Lashot no Ayam, the Most High in the sky is how we call Him. Those words are prayers. And so if we can be careful, right, and be cognizant, and just put words out there that teach us something, that make us feel good, or make us feel uncomfortable, because we all know, our therapists tell us when you're uncomfortable, that's exactly where you're supposed to be, right? Deal with that uncomfort, that discomfort, and get through it, right? So if we can speak in those ways, then I think we are moving forward as human beings who care about our planet. So that's what I have to share with you, and now I'm happy if you guys have any questions about anything I've said, any of the issues being presented in terms of indigenous communities, environment, language, anything, my glasses, whatever, you can ask a question. Yeah.
I have a silly question.
Okay.
What was the light that they let you keep it being built before?
What was it like?
The light.
Oh! It was actually quite short because, I had an emergency C-section, so I was out of it, and I, told them at the last minute after they were, kind of putting stuff away. So they were able to give me a chunk. It sounds so weird talking about this. But it's important, right? They were able to give me a chunk, and then I kept it in the freezer until I had prayed about and wrapped my head around what I was going to actually do with it as an Esalen person, and not necessarily as a person who has kind of been adopted into Miwok culture. Yeah. Good question. Yes?
something very similar would bury the Santa or something like that. And they would go back, they went back, and because the water has risen, it washed it away.
Oh, okay.
Are you concerned that's going to happen with yours?
No, I'm sure it got washed away. I'm sure some ocean critter ate it, and that's not in an effort to sound like Pocahontas. That's the circle of life, right? And so my son's DNA is now in the ocean somewhere in a fish or a critter, and it got passed on in another way, right? And that was kind of the reasoning behind putting it in a place that I knew it would wash out to the ocean. For me. For other people, it may not be so, cut and dry or acceptable. Yeah. Yes?
Why are you called the Miwok? Is that a white man's term that the white man laid on you?
It actually means person in the Miwok language. So the language that the people spoke here, white man came and said, "Who are you?" And they said, "Miwa" or "Miwa." There's different dialects. And they said, "Oh, you guys are the Miwok." But really, they were saying, "I'm a human. I'm a person." Yeah.
Second question. The individual we saw in the video, he talked about how the Shasta tribe is not federally recognized. What do the people have to do to become federally recognized?
Okay, good question. I actually had that in my notes. So my tribe is also not federally recognized. Most tribes on the coast of California, San Francisco, Monterey, Carmel, some of the most beautiful places in the world, all of the tribes are not federally recognized. And there's many reasons for that. Most tribes got their federal recognition through processes of dealing with the Indian problem within the United States and the government saying, we're putting you on reservations, we're putting you on rancherias, and we acknowledge you as a tribe that we have a domestic dependent relationship with, a nation-to-nation sovereignty with, and it has changed over the years in terms of how that relationship looks. So now if a tribe, so tribes like mine and like James's, there were anthropologists and linguists and governmental, workers that would go out and take census data of all the native people in the state, in the country, basically, but for California, it's a little bit different. And so during those times, it was extremely dangerous to be a California Indian person. Settlers could get paid to kill native people. Like, there were bounties on our heads, and if you were, even in 1952, if you were a native person walking around by yourself, a white person could come and take you and basically make you their servant for as long as they felt like they wanted to. So it wasn't safe to be native, so what do you do? For my people, a lot of us would either go hide in the mountains, and then we weren't counted, we weren't acknowledged, or we would pretend to be Hispanic, right? Because we had already had the Spanish from the missionization, all of that, so that would be safe for us. So when reservations and rancherias were being established, this land set aside for homeless Indians, that's what a rancheria is in California, and they put Indian people on those rancherias, there weren't a lot of us as Esalen people or as Shasta people marked down on those documents. And so we were just ignored and kind of just like, oh, they're dead. They no longer living. They're extinct. And if you read some anthropological text, that's what it will say about my people, about my language, as well as James's people and language. So that's one way in which, and then now to get federal recognition, you have to prove that you have existed as a tribe since time immemorial. And how do you prove that you got together on a regular basis to have bear dance when, you're not popping out the laptop and taking a roll, right? So that's one of the processes of getting federal recognition, and it kind of depends on where you started. So Wilton Rancheria had federal recognition, which is the local tribe here, had federal recognition. It was taken away, and then in 2009, they were able to get it restored based on the Tilly Hardwick case, which is a court case here in California. And so now they have federal recognition again, and they have sovereignty, which allows them to, create businesses, things like that. Good question. There and then there. Hopefully. I'm blown away, right? And all I can say back is Kolo. Kolo means love. So, Kolo.
I wanted to ask, where is the legal process? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Where is the legal process to remove the dams? I mean, I assume that some of the dams are still standing, or are they all gone?
No, I mean, those 4 dams up in Yurok territory, they've been fighting for years. Like, kids have grown up fighting, remove the dam, remove the dam. And I have lots of friends from up there. Like, everyone on there was related to somebody I know. So it's a whole process with, I think, the Bureau of Land Reclamation and the water companies and all of those things. So those dams are going to be removed, right? And I think just to reiterate what James was saying is, when you remove those dams, you're gonna dig up my ancestors. And so then that's a whole nother level of how do we protect those ancestors, those people that are there. So I'm not an expert on dam removal and like the legal processes of it, but those are kind of the 2 things that I take from it is these people have been fighting, my friends have been fighting, their families have been fighting for generations to get these dams removed, and they're finally going to be removed. And hopefully those salmon come back and those waters get healthy. But this entity that we call our brother is now dangerous for us to eat, right? Because of the disease, right? So it's just like this whole thing that how do you grasp that in your head? Your people have sustained themselves since time immemorial off of this fish. And now it can kill you, if you can even catch one, because of the disease that it might have, especially the children. So, yeah. I feel like there was one more hand. Oh, yeah.
When the dams initially went in, do you know what the cultural resource impact was beyond the fish population for those tribes?
So, I can tell you that if James is worried about taking out the dams causing distress to the cultural resources and the human remains that are buried there, that putting the dams in did probably 100 times more damage to those ancestors and to those villages that were buried in those burial sites, and cemeteries, basically, right? So I don't know 100% to answer that question, but I do know that it was significant. Anytime you dig by water, you're probably digging up a village site of the native people of that land. Yes?
For those in the audience who are interested in the legalities of dam removal, there's an organization that advocates and lobbies for dam removal. It's called Friends of the River. Their website is friendsoftheriver.org that you can look up online. The question I have for you is that you mentioned in your presentation that you're standing in a church that took your language away. And could you expound on that and how that affected your culture?
So, I come from people that were missionized, and so the Catholic Church, the missions throughout, Southern California, Mission Carmel, Mission San Juan Bautista, we were basically, our ancestors were enslaved in those missions, and they were, forced to become Catholic or neophytes, and in doing that, they were forced to speak Spanish. They were not allowed to speak their language. They were not allowed to participate in any of their cultural customs. And so as a person who comes from that and who's from a non-federally recognized tribe with no resources, we've lost a lot. We've lost a lot of our dances and our songs. We're revitalizing them. We've lost a lot of our language. So even though I can say some things in my language, the dictionary list of words is extremely small compared to any other language. We lost our land. We lost our villages. I mean, they're there, and we try to protect them to the best of our ability. In California, there's some other laws that allow non-federally recognized tribes to protect their ancestors and burials and things. But it was significant. And then now, and I can't not say this, now, if you've heard, in Canada, the residential schools in Canada have been digging up children that died in residential schools. And the United States is going to do that as well. And they've only dug up 4 schools, and they've already found 1,500 children that were buried, that had been kidnapped and taken to these boarding schools, that were there to assimilate children. Children were beaten for speaking their language. They were often sexually abused, starved, used as experiments for medical treatments, not given medical treatment. And now the world is going to see just how horrible these schools were for Native people. There's like 400 more to go, and they've already found, I think, 1,700 children buried. And so some people will say, oh, they died from TB. Okay. Why weren't their families notified? Why weren't they returned home? Why weren't they allowed to have a funeral? Why are they buried underneath a church? Right? So just something to connect that to what's going on in the world today. You probably won't see it on the mainstream news. You're gonna have to look for that if you're interested. But it's a huge resurgence of Native people bringing back their children. Okay, so for the sake of time, thank you, Lee, for inviting me to All Voices Choral Project, for having me. My heart and my soul feels good. Thank you for taking a healthy risk, sir, and acknowledging your privilege and the space that you now occupy. So thank you.
The song we're about to sing is called I Will Tread Lightly, and the light feeling of it, I I wanted to say something. I didn't plan on saying something until I realized, you know what we've just encountered together is among the more heavy things. And it's so important for us to be together in that heaviness. It's a lot of weight for one person, one people to bear. So as we sing this song called I Will Tread Lightly, it's because we want to take on some of the weight and be careful about our footprint. Thank you, Melissa. accept your outpouring of support and encouragement, and to have applause in the context of what we have been experiencing. I want to consider very intentionally that it is a celebration of our gifts and our talents and our skills, the investments we've made to bring ourselves to the ability to speak, to bring ourselves to the ability to move ourselves. We all in this room are so gifted and so smart and so strong. And if we had time to hear from each of you what you are doing in your lives, to answer the call that you feel within yourself to love, to be better, to make a difference in other people's lives, all of those things. We would be here for a very long time hearing about all those things. What we hope to do in our work as All Voices Choral Project is continue making relationships and continue being a voice. So we do invite you to donate. There's a box out in the hallway. We have some costs we will be sharing with the organizations that we highlighted earlier. So please give as you can. There already have been some really generous donations, and we very much appreciate that. Go in peace. Thank you.